HQ presented by Capital One, and here it is. That's not a misprint. That's Jonathan Jones's
What?
mock draft. That's right, JJ.
Wow.
Diving into the mocks now that we get a week within the draft, and hey, some of these guys like Pete Prisco, he's not going to deal with trades in his mock.
No.
Jonathan Jones, though.
Got some trades in there.
Oh, yeah, he's wheeling and dealing. He's got the Seahawks moving up from 9th to 6th to get Malik Willis at quarterback. Now, he is one of just 2 quarterbacks that Jonathan Jones has going in the first round. And he does have, I guess, what you would expect at the top with Aiden Hutchinson, the favorite to go number 1, though Ryan Wilson and Pete Prisco have had other players go number 1 overall to the Jaguars at the offensive line position. Let's bring in Jonathan Jones here. JJ, looking forward to breaking down the mock with you. We're not going to go through every pick, but just hit the big stuff here. And let's start with the trade. Why do you think the Seahawks are going to have to move up if they want to get Malik Willis?
Well, I don't think that the Seahawks are fine going into the season with Drew Lock or Geno Smith. We have a 70-year-old Pete Carroll as head coach. I don't really anticipate that he wants to do a rebuild right now. And so if you don't want to do a rebuild, if there's not that quarterback who is out there that you want to bring on, if the interest isn't necessarily there throughout the building in a Baker Mayfield, if Jimmy Garoppolo, who you wouldn't get anyway because they're not going to trade him within the division, go ahead and make that move. With the draft capital that you have by virtue of losing Russell Wilson, go up and find your next, hopefully, Russell Wilson. And I believe it would be a Malik Willis. You have the guys there in a Geno, in a Drew Lock, who Malik can learn behind. He doesn't have to be the week 1 starter. You have a familiar team in the Carolina Panthers with GM Scott Fitterer, who had been with the Seattle Seahawks for 2 decades. Dan Morgan, the assistant general manager, had been with the Seahawks front office for some time. So that is a move that I could absolutely see. Also, the Carolina Panthers very much want to trade back in this draft. So got to have a dance partner. That dance partner, I believe, would be the Seahawks moving from 9 to 6.
And that's a good point because Carolina does not have any other picks in the first 3 rounds outside of that one. So you got Malik Willis going number 6 overall. That would be the first time in, I think, 9 years that a quarterback does not go in the top 5, going back to that 2013 E.J. Manuel draft. Only one other quarterback in your first-round mock draft, and it's the Steelers at 20 taking Kenny Pickett. At this point, from what you're hearing, JJ, is it a slam dunk that the Steelers are going to take a quarterback there?
I don't want to say a slam dunk necessarily, but it certainly seems like it's very likely to happen. I mean, you look at their needs, they're not going to move on with Mitch Trubisky as a quarterback of their future necessarily. Excuse me. And so you look at who they're going to get after, and it's a Kenny Pickett, a guy from Pitt, a guy that they know very well, a guy that I very much see fitting in there in Pittsburgh.
And Kenny Pickett obviously playing his college football in that stadium as well. How familiar with Kenny Pickett are the Steelers?
Very familiar, Chris. Excuse me. Very familiar. They are. And I don't get the impression that the Pittsburgh Steelers care all that much about his hand size. I know a lot was made of it here in the pre-draft process, but he's played in that stadium. He's played in that environment. Again, you have Trubisky who can lead you if you need to, but he's steady. He's accurate with the football. He can be mobile. I think that he's a guy that makes a lot of sense for Pittsburgh there at 20.
All right, JJ. I mean, it's like a quarterback in the pocket facing pressure. Sometimes you just have to stand in and take the hit. JJ, I'm with you, man. I'm under the weather a little bit as well. Let's move on to the Vikings at number 12. And you've got them taking a guy that's going to help them with their new revamped 3-4 defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I understand a lot of people mocking Derek Stingley Jr. to the Minnesota Vikings. Frankly, I like that mock there. It makes a lot of sense. A former coach is there in Minnesota. They have a very obvious need at the cornerback position. It's a hand in glove, right? Well, they just moved to a 3-4 defense with Ed Donatel, and they really need that guy in the middle of that 3. And look no further than Jordan Davis, a guy that you know is absolutely going to be able to deliver, that he will take up 2 offensive linemen. He is going to be that guy in the middle of the defense. And frankly, I think that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the new general manager there in Minnesota, is taking a bit of a holistic approach with that defense, where he's going to look at this and say, hey, I want to take the best defender available. Do I have an obvious need at corner? Yes, but if I take the best defensive player that's ultimately going to help my defense in a larger way, that's the guy that I want. I think at 12, they could very well take a Jordan Davis. And listen, it would be delightful to the Houston Texans there sitting at 13 to then scoop up Derek Stingley Jr.
Okay, we've seen your top 20 here in your mock draft. Let's take a peek at the back end of JJ's first mock draft here, a week away from the first round of the NFL draft. He's got the Patriots taking Devin Lloyd. A wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, Traylon Burks, going to Green Bay at 22 before they go and get the edge, George Karlaftis. And you see the Bears with a pick there as well. They don't have a first-round pick. That is a trade for JJ. We're going to hit that in just a second. But let's go to 27, JJ. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they're going defensive lineman with Logan Hall. Why?
Yeah, it makes so much sense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to take a defensive lineman. Talking with folks there, it certainly seems like it could be a defensive lineman. You never really know how the end of the draft is going to shake out. Really, the day of the draft, you certainly don't know a week before the draft. But it's a clear need for them. You look, and Ndamukong Suh may very well be done playing football. You consider the movement that they have and how they want to continue to build for the future there along the defensive line. And William Golson has been a stalwart of that defensive line for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's on the other side of 30 now. So who do you want to replace and get involved with that D-line that will be led by Vita Vea? Well, I look at a Logan Hall, a guy with 33-inch long arms who in certain sub-packages you can move him outside. You probably want him in the interior for the majority of snaps. But I look at defensive line as the top need for the Buccaneers, and then there's a pretty big gap, and then you look at corner, and there's even a larger gap, and you look along the offensive line. That's why I have Logan Hall, a guy who's already visited with the team, a guy who has some versatility, going to Tampa and helping that defensive line.
Okay, we saw a bunch of wide receivers in your first-round mock. We counted 7. The over-under is 5.5 for wide receivers taken in this first round. Why do you think it's going way over?
Well, I have the mock trade right there with the Chicago Bears sliding into the first round in a trade with Kansas City to secure their wide receiver. And listen, I just think that they don't want to pay wide receivers. I've been on the phone all day with executives around the league where they're asking me, hey, what's going on with all these third-year wide receivers and the money that they're wanting? Well, listen, look at what's coming into the league right now. We have so many ready-made wide receivers, as we've seen the past couple of years, the influence of 7-on-7 and how these guys are just ready to make their mark in the NFL. So it's not necessarily plug and play, but it's not that wild that you can draft a guy and then all of a sudden he's giving you 800 receiving yards in his rookie season. And so I think these NFL teams are saying, hey, do I want to pay a guy $20, $23, $25 million per year in the case of Tyreek Hill? Or, and this was the determination that the Kansas City Chiefs obviously made, do I want to try my hand at the draft and build toward the future? Is it going to help my team tomorrow? Not necessarily. The Chiefs aren't any better without Tyreek Hill or with this rookie wide receiver that they probably are going to take in the first 2 rounds of the draft. However, when you have to factor in salary cap and team building into all of this and down the road, would you rather have a cost-controlled rookie on your team that can deliver a large percent of what Tyreek Hill can do at a fraction of the price and at 6 years younger than Tyreek Hill? That's the determination that these teams are having to make with their own roster, and that's why I think we're going to see a run on wide receivers here in the first round.
And you said you didn't think there'd be a lot of trades on day one compared to years past, but you do have obviously the Seahawks trading up to 6 to get Malik Willis, but then in the back end, the Bears trading up into the first round to get wide receiver Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, I do. And the reason why I don't think there's going to be a lot of trades is we've already seen a lot of trades. A lot of teams have already done all of their jockeying here in the first round of the draft. Look like the Saints, and you look at the Eagles, you look at the Packers, and the list goes on. We all know how crazy of a March and April it has been with the NFL, but also teams are really going to want to hold on to next year's draft picks because we all understand that this is not the strongest draft as it relates to the first round, and so no one is going to want to give up next year's first in order to really get into this year's first. And so you start looking and where are you going to be able to slide up I have the Chicago Bears. They don't have a first-round pick after trading that away last year to get Justin Fields. And Ryan Poles, the new Bears general manager, has a tall task in front of him. He has to help his franchise quarterback going into his second year. He needs to get up into the back end of the first round of the draft to get that wide receiver, a guy with great hands in Dotson, a reliable target for him, and he can make the deal with Kansas City with their second pick in the first round, a team that he just came from, a team that knows him very well, a team that's outside of his division and conference. So that's why that trade makes sense. That's why I have that in my mock.
All right, Jonathan Jones with us here with his first mock draft a week ahead of the NFL draft. You made it to the finish line. It was like Greg Maddux giving up a couple early runs and then settling in and ending up with the complete game and the win. JJ with us here on HQ. Thanks, man. Let's look at the odds to be the number 1 overall pick. It is Aiden Hutchinson, the favorite, followed by Travon Walker at plus 350, and then a pretty deep, steep drop down to the offensive linemen, Ike Ekwonu and Evan Neal, who are Pete Prisco and Ryan Wilson think there's a chance Jacksonville could go with one of those guys.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.